In this lesson, we're going to make a press mold. I've made 6 handles that I want to be able to reproduce quickly. The first thing I do is I set them flat on a slab, then I build a small box around the forms. I reinforce it around the outside to ensure that there's no leaks. Here I have my mold box sitting inside a cookie sheet in case anything goes wrong. It's always wise to think ahead of time. If plaster starts to leak, how do I minimize the mess? Sometimes I'll have excess plaster left over after I've poured a mold. That's why I have the orange bowl out here, in case I need to pour the extra into that. Spray down your mold box and forms thoroughly with a universal mold release. This one works really well for me. When I'm working with plaster, I always wear a mask and I always try to stir up as little dust as possible. You can see how I'm gently pouring it into my cup. This plaster mixes at 10 parts plaster to 7 parts water by weight. I usually just kind of eyeball it. You can also use the island method shown here. You just keep pouring plaster in until a small island forms at the top. Let it sit for a few minutes and it'll be settled in. I'm usually waiting about 15 minutes until the plaster is ready to pour. I knock vigorously on the sides of the container to loosen up air bubbles and get them out of the plaster. Try to pour slowly and smoothly into your mold box. You want to minimize any splashing or air bubbles that get stirred up through pouring too vigorously. There we go, I'm going to use all that. I've been waiting about 45 minutes and I think we're about ready to demold. This mold box is all clay, so it's going to be really easy to get out. I just peel the sides back, peel the bottom off, and there we go. Set that clay aside and put it in a separate bag. You don't want to mix this with your normal clay. The first thing I'm going to do is shave the edges off with a rasp to make it easy to work with. Let's clean this up as we go. You can see those forms casted really well. There was only a little bit of bleeding under one of them. With an X-Acto knife, I trace the edges of each handle, prying them up and out of the mold as I go along. Now, I tried my best to avoid undercuts on my handles, but I'll bet there's still some there. I can fix any problem areas with a small piece of 220 grit sandpaper rolled up into a thin rod. Using both the sandpaper and my finger, I clean up that mold. This technique works for slab handles, relief sculpture work, or pretty much anything you want to reproduce a lot of that doesn't have undercuts. This is a sample lesson from my new course on making pottery mugs. To find out more, go to mugsaremoney.com or click the link in the description below.